What's up, you beauties? Welcome back to the High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel. Today we're talking about the Flyers' pipeline of goaltenders with none other than Jason Myrtetus, Flyers Broadcast Network. Jason, one step away from talking about I know you're supposed as am I. One of the bigger question marks heading into the Flyers season is the goaltending position. But I have you on. I want to talk about the Flyers' pipeline of goalies here. And let's kind of just start off right off the bat. Let's get to Sam Ersson and who's the backup? Ivan Fedotov.
Yeah, I mean, let's start taking them kind of one at a time. Ersson, last year had a really kind of yin and yang season, right? Came in. I don't think we even thought that he was going to be the backup when the season started. I think we kind of were looking at Felix Sandstrom to be that guy. But you remember the year prior to that, he got that game against Carolina and he got pulled. And then he had to go back in because I believe it was Hart who got hurt. And he had to go back in and he battled his way. They ended up losing, I think, that game in overtime. I think it was like 7-6 or something like that. And that kind of opened John Tortorella's eyes to his mental game and his mental strength. And then he came into camp last year and he earned that backup spot last year to Carter Hart. He didn't play a ton in the beginning. Got, some games here and there, one out of every 3.5, I guess is probably the way I would look at it. And was performing really well. I had a run there where he went on a run of 21 games, I think, where he had like a .937 save percentage, a couple of shutouts, and was really good. And then January, I want to say 20th hit, and that was the Colorado game where that was Carter's last game. Carter actually got pulled in his last game. And he lost that game 7-4, and Sam came in, and the team went on a run that at that time, and I think it lost 5 straight. And as the team struggled, Sam began to struggle. You kind of go, what's first, the chicken or the egg when it comes to goaltending? Bad goaltending will pull a team down, and a bad team will pull good goaltending down. So it almost doesn't matter what comes first. It's the importance of the position. But Sam did something at the end of the year that I thought was really important, was the last 2 games, he only gave up 1 goal. He had that game 81 against New Jersey where he got a 1-0 shutout. And after what he went through and the team went through, I would have bet my last penny that there was no way a 1-0 shutout would have been in the cards. Mm-hmm. But he got that in game 81, and then game 82, he only gave up the 1 goal, the game-winning goal. The 2-1 goal was into an empty net in the second period, if you recall. So he finished really strong with a couple of games, but he comes into this season understanding the workload a little bit more. But the question for me is, everybody wants to be the number 1 goalie, but you don't know the pressures that come with it until you're it. How is he going to react in that situation is what I wonder. Now, his mental game is one of the strengths of his package, and I talked to him at camp, and I said, what want to geek out with him. What'd you work on this summer? Did you work on, movement, post integration? And he said, no, I worked on the mental side of the game, which I thought was okay. He just doesn't want to let one bad game turn into 2 and mess with a goaltender's belief structure. So how he goes into this season, he looked tremendous in preseason, I'll tell you that.
He did.
Way ahead of where I think most goalies look in preseason, just every element, battling through screens and reading plays, all that stuff. I thought he looked really good. So with that being said, I'm expecting a strong start from him.
I think I am as well. And, you had really good interviews with him. And what I was curious, and I'll ask you is, you're a goalie, does going into a season preparing to be a backup, I don't know, do you have to mentally prepare yourself to take on a load of 40, 50 games? And he was kind of thrust into that. I have to assume the Flyers had an idea that something could happen last year, but I don't know that Sam Ersson went into last year thinking he was going to play, 51 games and start 45, 50 games last season. Could that have could that take a toll on a player?
I think it's in your mind that you're coming into the season, hey, I'm Carter Hart's backup. He's probably going to play 54 games. But like you said, they probably knew that he was in peril. So they probably did prepare Sam for that, that was a possibility. They didn't know when, obviously, his departure would take place. But I'm sure they prepared him for that. But again, it's one of those things like I don't buy into the whole he became the starter and it freaked him out thing. I don't buy it. There's nobody in the NHL. They're all like insane competitors. You know what I mean? And there's no guy that's going to be like, "Hey, I'm playing more. I'm nervous about it." Like they all want to play more. You know what I mean? You don't get to that level without loving that situation from a playing time standpoint. So I don't buy into that. I almost don't, the other thing I don't buy into a whole heck of a lot too, Jim, is I don't buy into they played him so much he was tired. I get he played more than he ever played, but I don't buy into that rationale a ton. Yeah, a guy can get fatigued if you play him 60-plus games, but these are professional athletes. Like, I don't buy that. He played 51 games. He was just gassed. I don't believe that. I think it was more that the team wasn't playing well. He wasn't playing well. Who drug who down, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But their situation changed in a big way when Carter went down. What was a strength for that team now became a question mark. And it wasn't just Sam. It was Felix Sandstrom and Cal Peterson at the time before Fedotov got here. So I think all those dynamics played into it for sure. Couple that with, they traded Sean Walker. They did get weaker on D. Ristolainen was hurt, didn't play. We looked at the D and we said, well, Walker got traded and Sealer got hurt. The one thing that we never mentioned was that Ristolainen was gone. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden you go, well, he was a third pair guy. Okay. But now the guy playing on your third pair is a guy that's supposed to be in the AHL. So the trickle-down effect of that is pretty pronounced. So, I think that mental stuff about, his situation changing, causing him some angst, I just don't buy into that. I don't. I think a guy looks at that and goes, here's my opportunity. I got to make the most of it.
Sure. That's totally fair. Makes actually more sense. I'm an Ersson guy. I think he's going to have a really solid year. As long as the Flyers can be what we expect them to be, and we expect them to be, I think, a pretty solid team this year. They should challenge maybe for a playoff spot, no matter what the national, media says. Because I think I saw Vegas or one of the points totals has them actually regressing points wise.
84.5. They started out at 89.5. They haven't done 84 now.
Yeah. So, I think they could be, around somewhere the same. But I just think Ersson's set to have a solid year. And I think a lot of that may depend on who's behind him in Ivan Fedotov. And, you're at camp every day. From what I've seen of Fedotov in games, and it's not really fair to bring this up, but the end of last season didn't look great. I know the situation was pretty dire, or else they would have never tossed him in there like that. But in preseason, I have to say I haven't really been impressed with him. But, like I said, you see him every day. Can Fedotov be the backup that the Flyers need for Ersson this season?
It can be. I think it's good for Ersson in the same way when Carter Hart was here, to have a guy in Fedotov and a guy like Kosov pushing him. They always talk about competition in sports for a position and how it's good, and I totally agree with it. And I think it's magnified times 100 when it comes to goaltending. Why? Simple. There's only one crease.
Yeah.
You go, okay, I'm battling all these guys for competition on my team, but that's for playing time and power play or special teams. That's not for to sit on the bench or not sit on the bench. That's what it is for a goalie, and there's only two spots, right? So I think that competition is really good. As far as Fedotov goes, I don't know. I'm definitely not going to judge him on the 3 appearances last year, and I'm not going to make a determination on him until I see a good 16, 20 appearances this year. I think there's a lot of adjustment that still needs to happen in his game. It does not happen overnight in the goaltending position, and where he played before is so vastly different than where he's playing now. Yeah. In the way that they attack you, the way they try and disguise what they're doing, the use of east-west passes on scoring attempts, and the traffic they put around you. And I know everybody goes, well, he's big, he can just look over it. I watched him look over traffic in the preseason. That's not a good idea. You don't look over traffic. You have to look around it. Because if you lift up, you're dead as a goalie. And he did that a lot. It's a tendency of his because of his size to look up over traffic. And as soon as your whole body lifts up, they shoot wherever. You're just not in a position to move into a save. If you're looking around it, and you saw Kolosov do that, I was impressed with Kolosov. He would look around the screen, they would shoot it to what became the long side because he looked around it, say to the right, and that became long side. But what he could do when he saw the release was going there, because he was looking around the screen and could catch the release, was he was sliding in the saves. That's what you want to do. But if you're up, it's really difficult to do. So that's some things that he's got to get used to in how they attack you in the NHL. I brought this up with him when I talked to him the other day. I remember Semyon Varlamov talking about it. He played in the NHL, went back to the KHL because of the work stoppage, and then came back to the NHL and he said it took him months to readjust to the traffic in the NHL again. And he had already played the NHL, right? So it is one of those things that he's going to have to get used to. And I agree with you. Like, Fedotov is not going to be a guy that's aesthetically pleasing to watch. Yeah. Sam's pretty aesthetically pleasing to watch. Carter was incredibly aesthetic pleasing to watch because of the way he moved. So effortless, no wasted movements. It was so much flow to his game. Fedorov, being a bigger guy, almost looks clumsy, right?
He does,
yeah, and that's part of it with the big guy. They're not going to be as smooth. I mean, the only really big guy that I thought was smooth was Pekka Rinne. But that comes more from that Finnish style of goaltending that he brought in. But, I don't know what Fedorov's going to be. I don't. I think the key question with him is two things. Number one, it's going to be the ability to deal with traffic in a way where he can get his eye on a release and put himself in a position to slide in the saves. And then the other thing is going to be play reading. Reading the plays, not overplaying situations, being patient on your feet. He does have a tendency, like a lot of Russian goaltenders do when they first get here, is to default into a butterfly. And I get when he's on his knees, he's taller than most goalies. But that takes away your ability to move laterally in a big way, especially for him. Like, you look at Shesterkin, he can be on his knees, he's a hovercraft, right? But Fedotov is not that because there's a lot of long limbs there. So those are going to be the two biggest keys, I think, for him. And to handicap it going in, I don't know. I don't. He's 27. He'll be 28, I think, in November. He's beyond his peak development years. Does that make it easier or harder to develop into a new league? I don't know. I don't have the answer. We don't see this very often. But he had some really successful years in the KHL and in international play. So we'll see where it goes. But you're going to need three goalies, so I think Kolosov's going to come into play at some point.
Yeah, and that's a good little segue. Like, Fedotov is a legitimate question mark, it sounds like, at least to me.
I think they all are.
Yeah, okay.
I really do.
That's fair enough, yeah. And so let's talk about Kolosov, who, the question mark of all question marks. Like, was he actually going to come over? And now he's here, and it's how long is he going to be here? Elliot Friedman put something out that if there's not some kind of agreement by the end of October that both parties can agree on, I guess he'll still have the option to return to the KHL if he's not happy, I guess, with whatever the agreement is. They're going to play
the shit out of him with the Phantoms and
send him back,
and then try not to send him back. Yeah, they want to keep him here,
right?
And I think that they're pulling out all the stops right now to make him as comfortable as possible. Yeah. And one of the areas where when somebody comes over, doesn't speak the language a lot, the one place they feel the most comfortable is on the ice. Yeah. So they're going to put him on the ice a ton. And
that's where he should be, right? He's going to be the starting goalie down there. And, maybe last year left a bad taste in his mouth and he thought it was going to be like that the entire time. But they got him over here, and to me, that's the biggest thing, because you don't know who's in his ear, over in Russia. And now that he's here, you can put all the guys you want in his ear. He's hanging out with Michkov, Zamula, Fedotov, guys that make him feel comfortable. And I'll tell you the truth, he's fun to watch. Like, he's fun to watch the play the goalie position. What have you seen from Kolosov that you like, and do you think it's a possibility that we see him up with the Flyers at any point this year?
Yeah, to me, he's a very aesthetically pleasing goaltender to watch. The first thing you notice, obviously, between him and Fedotov is the size difference is so
Okay.
much. Fedotov 6'7". I think Kolosov's listed at 6'2", 6'1". I think he's more like 5'11" and a half. He's not that big. Which, look, there's not a lot of small-ish goalies in the league anymore, but one of the best ones in the league is a smallish guy in UC Saros. You just have to attack the position from a different lens than a bigger guy. He moves incredibly well. He's incredibly athletic. The way he moves, and I'm not comparing because he doesn't have the success that Sergei Bobrovsky or Igor Shesterkin have, but he moves like that. I'm not saying he's going to be them. Maybe I have no idea. Prognosticating goaltender development is a very tough business. But he is an incredible skater. When I say skating, I mean goalie skating, and his control and movements and explosiveness. Doesn't explode himself out of position. But there's going to be elements that he's got to, like Fedotov, some habits that you get in the KHL because they work there that won't work here. And the one thing I really noticed in the preseason and watching him was two things. One, again, defaulting to the butterfly way too early. And while he's got a very good glove hand, he'll get beat high if you're down too early. In the NHL, it's too unforgiving. They'll exploit that. And number two, he's got to get out of it, an RVH position where he's down on his knees when the puck's down below the goal line. He's staying in it a little bit too long. Like, you got to know when to get out of RVH, when it stops being a benefit. And he was staying in it a little bit long. So he's got to figure those things out. I think he's got to figure out his depth a little bit at the NHL, which is another key element. He's got explosiveness, so he can move. He can take a little bit more ice, and he'll need to take a little bit more ice to make himself bigger because he doesn't have the benefit of size. But the more ice you take forward on an east-west play is the longer distance you got to travel to get there. You know, you look at goalies like we watched Carey Price or Carter Hart, and you see a lot of pucks hit them in the logo. That's just because they didn't take a lot of ice, and they were very quick to their spot on their feet. And you look over the years at goalies like Jonathan Quick, or you look at a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, and you see them make these crazy acrobatic saves. Well, that acrobatic save is actually a self-inflicted wound that you had to go to make it because you took too much ice. So you got to go into desperation. So there's a fine line there, though, between desperation and having to use it all the time to beating pucks and getting set and square on your edges. So he's going to have to learn to stay on his feet a little bit more, make himself as big as possible, take the ice that he can while still being able to get there on those east-west plays. And again, same thing for him, too, is going to be play reading and dealing with traffic. He's going to I like the way he dealt with traffic in the preseason when I saw him, the way he looked around screens. Looking around a screen, there's actually a technique to it. You want to put yourself in a, like, you never want to look around a screen to the long side because then you give up short side. Why do you not want to give up short side net? Because that's a shorter route for the puck to get to the net on the short side. And the long side is always clogged more, so if they shoot it to the middle of the ice, then it's got more likelihood of hitting someone and not even getting to the net. And it's a longer route. So a lot of those things I'm sure he'll go through with Dilly and the communication with his defenseman as he gets better with his language. Like, those things are all elements of the position and the communication. That's why, like, when Fedotov got here, like, we were like, throw him in there. I'm like, he can't even communicate with his guy. Like, he doesn't even know where to drop pucks off when he knocks down a rim. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just throw him. A lot of people look at the position, they say, see puck, stop puck. It's just so much more to it than that. So,
I laugh because I'm kind of, when I watch goalies, I'm like, I really don't know what I'm watching, which is, one of the main reasons that I have you on, because these people don't want to hear me try to explain goaltending. But I'm just like, well, if as long as they can stop the puck. But something I hadn't even thought of, that when Fedotov came over, how could he even talk to his guys? You're right.
Couldn't.
And that's a major disadvantage.
Yeah, you can't communicate. You have no idea where. I mean, a big part of goaltending, and for Fedorov too, because he likes to play the puck, is getting out, knocking down a rim, and then, okay, where am I leaving it behind the net? Is my defenseman peeling to the corner? Am I giving him a 6-foot pass? Am I reversing it? If I'm going to reverse it, or they're yelling to me to reverse it, am I even going to know what the hell they're saying?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I did an interview with him when he first got here. Denis Gurianov had to sit in the interview and explain everything I was asking. He didn't speak. He understood some stuff, but not enough to have a conversation. In the heat of battle of a game, I don't think he was going to sit there and go, "What did he say? Reverse? Okay."
Yeah, right. And everything's got to be like this out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be instantaneous. You can't think. So, especially when you're playing the puck, like that's one of the most decisive actions of a goalie. Goalies always get themselves into trouble when they get their head up and they start thinking, I can pass to multiple different people. Get the puck and get rid of the puck. Get back in the fucking crease.
Right.
That's my philosophy.
It's
as a guy who liked to play the puck like I did.
Well, as soon as you start double second guessing yourself, that's it.
You're dead. Yeah. And then the other thing, if it ends up in your feet or something like that, just go back to your crease. Everybody tries to pick it out of their feet. You're never going to pick it out of your feet in goalie equipment.
Nah. Somebody's on you in 0.2 seconds.
Yeah, it happens way too fast.
So everything that you're saying here is all the more reason why Kolosov, should have been over here sooner. I don't really want to get into the whole why he wasn't here, yada yada. But everything that you're saying, he needed to be here for the entirety of camp. Like, there's a lot that he needs to adjust to. Like Fedotov, the way I see him is he's here for 2 years, and maybe Kolosov comes up and fills those shoes. That's how I'm looking at it. We don't know. Maybe Fedotov takes off and is one of the better goalies. Who knows?
You don't have a huge commitment, so there's not. You got some skin in the game, but it's not all. You're not in a position where you're like, oh, I'm saddled with this if it doesn't work out.
Right.
2-year deal, okay.
Right.
Not a big deal.
So Kolosov, they need to find a way to convince him to. I mean, whatever it is, he needs to be here because there's so much he needs to learn and adjust to. It sounds like maybe.
Well, he's going to get called up, Jimmy. I mean, they're not going through the year with 2 guys.
Oh yeah,
I got news for you. They probably won't go through the year with 3 guys.
Yeah,
we'll probably see McAnemy at some point. You may even see Cal Peterson too. Like,
Christ.
Look, in today's game, you're not getting through the year with just your starter and your backup.
It's true.
So Kolosov's going to get time in the NHL. He's going to make his NHL debut, and I think that's going to be part of what they say to him. Is like, dude, if we loan you back to Dynamo Minsk, we can't recall you to play in the NHL. No, you got to recall McAnemy at that point.
Yeah.
So if you want to make your NHL debut this year and really see what it feels like to play in a real NHL game, you got to stay.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so from one Russian or a Belarusian to another Russian in Igor Zavragin, apparently he's lighting it up, or he was lighting up for Sochi in the KHL. SKA just recalled him from loan. What can you tell us about Igor Zavragin?
Look, he was a guy that they weren't planning on drafting, and they had already taken Bjarnason in that draft.
That's right.
They took Bjarnason 51st overall, I believe, in the second round, and then Zvragin was still there, and they were like, "Oh my God, we got to take this guy." And look, I think you should take a goalie in every draft, before the 4th or 5th round, because you never know. Like, you can't have enough guys developing.
Yeah.
And he was well thought of. Tremendous year last year. I mean, a .941 save percentage last year. Granted, it was the or the VHL. It wasn't the top league, but then he came into the KHL this year. I mean, and he's banged out a .941.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty 2.21 goals against average. I mean, you're talking about a draft plus 1 kid, and those are pretty outrageous. That team sucks too.
Right. Which makes it even more spectacular, really.
Yeah, I mean, he may be shooting to the top of the rankings as far as goalie prospects around the globe. He may be getting close to the top of that. I mean, he's reaching the numbers that he's put up. I know it's early this year, but if he has a year and he continues, I'm not saying he's got to have a .941 by the end of the year, but if he has a really big season, I mean, he's looking very promising. There's a lot that has to happen between now and when he gets to the NHL. I mean, I still think he's minimum 3 years away. But what a baseline to start from. A lot of people think, too, Jimmy, that sometimes that, well, why is he 3 years away? Shesterkin came over, was successful right away, so was Sorokin. Yeah, Shesterkin got here, he was 25.
Yeah.
So is Sorokin. They don't come over as 19 and 20-year-olds. And a lot of those guys play some AHL too. So it does take time. But yeah, he looks like he may be an absolute monster. So we'll see where it goes. I wish I could see him more, watch him more, He's got decent size. He's not overly large. He's 6'2". Good length to him. A very aesthetically pleasing guy to watch. Moves incredibly well. So, yeah, I mean, he's exciting.
That's a pretty big deal when a team like SKA,
when they recall
wants you on your team, right?
Yeah, that's a big
He's
deal.
a 19-year-old goalie.
That's very telling.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay, so let's move on over to the aforementioned Carson Bjarnason, who was drafted in the second round of the same draft. That was 2023, correct?
Yep. 51st overall for Bjarnason. The best way for me to kind of look at Bjarnason's game is to compare where he was in development camp and training camp in 2023. So not this summer, past summer, to development camp, rookie camp, and training camp of this year. That apples to apples comparison, but a year later to see how a guy has developed. Bjarnason, first and foremost, and I noticed this at development camp when he came in. Naturally, I asked for him to come in to tape an interview. When he walked in, I was like, Jesus Christ. Like, he looked so different.
Yeah.
Because, he's 18 last year, and these kids can change really fast in a year. And when you get drafted, all of a sudden, they send you home with a workout program and everything. You come back, you look different. You lose a lot of baby fat, and you just look more fit and older, and he did. And he looked like his bottom half much stronger, and like his base is just stronger and more explosive. You can tell that he trained with a purpose, of what he wants to become as an NHL goalie. You won't find a guy that is as enthusiastic, and he takes in every moment when he's here. I mean, they got to kick him out of the facility. So he is a really pleasant guy, pretty normal for a goalie too, like not a bizarre personality guy, pretty normal demeanor to him. But he just came in this year, and I just thought he looked so much more under control, in his movements. And I noticed it right away in the rookie games. In goaltending, we have a saying, nothing through me. Like, if I get to the spot, I got to make the save. I can't have it going through my arm and my body. So nothing through me. I'll get there, and if I get there, I can't let anything go through me. And he didn't let anything go through him. And he was dealing with a lot of deflections and rebounds and those kind of things. I thought he ate pucks. He made a lot of saves into the logo, which doesn't tell me that the shooters weren't good enough and they were just hitting him. It tells me he was in the right spot. And he was getting to his spot, and he was... I thought he controlled the pace of the game and slowed it down when he needed to, which is a little nuance to goaltending. I just thought he looked so much better and more confident. And physically, I thought he looked better as well. And he's probably, he's going to be on Team Canada for World Juniors. He might be the starter. He's got a good chance. He had a really good year of development. This is another really big year for him, and especially when he plays World Juniors, that's going to be a great experience for him. So I expect him to be in the AHL next year and keep pushing. And another guy got good size. They have really good goaltending depth. They really do.
They do. If they could get him up in the AHL while they still have Zavragin cooking over in the KHL, that would be huge. And to eventually maybe get them up close to the Flyers at the same time, have them competing. I do want to mention that it does sound like everything that you're saying about Bjarnason is paying off, at least through 3 games this year with the Brandon Wheat Kings. Last season, he finished with a .907 save percentage. Through just 3 games, he's off to a .930 save percentage.
He's been good. You're going to see him. Look, that team's not very good. It's not the Brandon Wheat Kings of old. Mm-hmm. But you're just going to see better numbers because, he's now in his 19-year-old season, 19 into 20. Well, he just turned 19 at the end of June. But, you're just going to see a player that's more mature and going to handle it even better. in juniors this year. So he's another promising goaltending prospect. I would imagine by most of the prospect guys, looking at the Flyers system, they probably have no lower than a top 4 goalie prospect pool of any team in the league.
Wow.
So there's a lot of options there, and that's a good thing because they're not all going to pan out.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but if you have one extra that does, boy, that's a great trade chip too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because while Carter Hart was here, everything was kind of clogged up, and now he had to leave on obviously under unfortunate circumstances or whatever. Now it seems like a lot of these guys are here all at once. It's like a free for all almost. I think Ersson has obviously the lead spot. We have Fedotov over here now. Kolosov's here now, vying for a top 2 spot. And then you got the 2 younger guys in the wings, playing well already.
Yeah.
So,
and that's good, man. Like you should, at that position, you should always be looking over your shoulder.
Yeah.
You should. It's one thing to get the net. It's another thing to keep it.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
A little healthy competition never hurt anybody. At least I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people suggested too, they should carry 3 goalies. I can't think of a worse idea in the world than to carry 3 goalies.
So,
it just doesn't work.
How come? Talk about why that's not a great idea.
Just go watch a practice with 3 goalies. What's one of the guys doing? He's sitting there on the side of the ice with his thumb in his ass.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
The other 2 guys, and he feels uncomfortable because he needs to get work in, but the 2 guys that are 1 and 2 need to get their work in. They feel uncomfortable because they hate seeing a goalie just standing over there with his thumb in his ass, but they don't want to give up the crease because they need to get their work in.
Right.
There's only 2 nets.
So
it's just an uncomfortable feeling. It's not good for anybody, and most of all, it's not good for the guy that's third.
Yeah.
He's getting very little work in practice. He's getting some work with the goalie coach. Yay. That doesn't do you much good, though, in a game. It's no simulation there. And he's not getting any game time. You got to play the position and develop.
Yeah, you're right.
You can't just watch it.
I mean, and then when he's getting time, it's kind of taking time away from the one of the other 2 guys. So it's
so it benefits nobody. It just doesn't work. Short term, you can do it if you want to protect a guy because of waiver claim, whatever. You can do it, but you can't do it in perpetuity. I mean, if it worked, you'd see teams doing it all over the NHL. You see it when they want to protect a guy. They don't want to put a certain goalie through waivers they think will be picked up at that specific time. They'll do it later because the team that they thought was going to pick them up solved their problem already, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, it makes total sense. Jace, where can everyone find your work? Obviously, most of the people already know, but just in case they're, those who don't know where they can find your work yet, and where can they find you on social media?
On X, I'm not calling it Twitter anymore. It's at Jason Myrt, JasonMyrt, and then Flyers Daily. We started our season schedule. We're going Monday through Friday this year, no Saturdays and Sundays. And then
off.
Yeah, and taking weekends off.
There you go. Good for you.
Graduated. And on the Flyers YouTube channel, we put the podcast there as well. And on tomorrow's episode, we obviously preview the game. But I broke down 8 numbers that matter if the Flyers want to make the playoffs.
Ooh, that sounds good.
With some good data behind them. So everything from how many goals they can give up per game to how many they need to score, power play percentage, goal differential by periods. I went pretty deep on it. If people want to know what they need to do to make the playoffs, those 8 numbers that matter, if they can meet those, they'll make the playoffs. If they can't, they won't.
This comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be listening or watching. Okay, Jace, thanks for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this segment. Let us know what you guys think in the comments about the Flyers goalie pipeline. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily Flyers content on HW Hockey. For Jason, I'm Jim. Have a good night, everyone.